A man leaves for a routine hunting trip and vanishes without a trace. Years later, a traffic stop unravels a web of lies, betrayal, and a crime hidden in plain sight. What really happened to Clarence Biddle? The truth is darker than anyone imagined. Subscribe to Crime Case Tuber for more chilling cases where justice is never as simple as it seems. Let's dive in. October 12, 2012, Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania. The morning began like every other opening day of hunting season for Clarence Biddle. A crisp October air settled over the hills of Susquehanna County, and darkness still clung to the countryside. At 4:30 a.m., Clarence, a 42-year-old electrician known for his precision and quiet habits, moved through his familiar pre-dawn ritual. The silver 1999 Ford F-150 sat idle in the driveway, its bed already half filled with gear packed the night before. His orange vest, boots, a thermos of coffee, and the same bolt-action rifle he'd used for over a decade. Inside the modest farmhouse, his wife Reba stood at the kitchen window, arms folded over her nightgown. She watched him with unreadable eyes as he made his final checks. He walked to the backyard shed, pausing to examine the lock. Once, then again, always twice, Clarence had been known to circle back from the driveway if he had the slightest doubt about locking up. Neighbors said it was just Clarence being Clarence, a stickler for order, a man who counted change twice and tied knots in rope like he was preparing for a Navy drill. At 5:17 a.m., Clarence slid into the driver's seat, glanced once at the house, and then drove off down Miller Hill, road toward Route 706. The taillights faded into the dark ribbon of road, swallowed by the stillness of the woods. He was supposed to be heading to the Susquehannock State Forest, a place he had visited in prior years, always alone, always for peace. Inside his wallet were $127 in cash, withdrawn the previous afternoon from Montrose Savings Bank, and his IBEW Local 1249 Union card. His hunting license, tucked in the glove box, was valid through November 30th. Everything seemed in order, but one thing was off. He hadn't kissed Reba goodbye. Reba would later tell officers it wasn't unusual. "He wasn't a sentimental guy," she said, but her words lacked conviction. In over 18 years of marriage, he'd never left for a trip without a goodbye kiss, even when angry, even when rushed. That absence would later become a small yet crucial detail in the unraveling of what began as a simple missing persons report. It wasn't until 62 hours later, nearly 3 days, that Reba called the sheriff's department to report Clarence missing. When deputies arrived, they found her calm, not panicked, not tearful, just reserved. She explained that Clarence went hunting alone every October and wasn't due back at a specific time. "Sometimes he loses track of time," she added. "He likes being out there." Still, the delay in reporting unsettled investigators, and as they reviewed the timeline, questions emerged. Where exactly had Clarence gone? Had anyone seen him along the way? And why, if this was such a routine trip, was there no evidence he ever arrived at the forest? The search began quietly, but it would not stay that way for long. The search for Clarence began with quiet determination. Deputies combed through the Susquehannock State Forest, beginning near the common hunting areas Clarence had visited in the past. Forest Ranger Thomas Ely, a veteran of many search operations, coordinated with local volunteers and wildlife officials. They expected to find tracks, a spent cartridge, or even a note on the Game Commission's hunter log. Something, anything, to show Clarence had arrived, but there was nothing. His name was absent from the check-in logs, no tire tracks matching. His Ford F-150 were visible near the forest's main entrances. Wildlife cameras set up along major trails caught no glimpse of him or his truck. It was as if Clarence had never set foot in the woods. Phone records were pulled, and they delivered a troubling revelation. His cell phone had last pinged off a tower 17 miles south of the state forest, near an old industrial area few hunters visited. The timestamp? 5:42 a.m., barely 25 minutes after Clarence was seen leaving home. If he was truly heading to the forest, why had he taken such a detour? Ranger Ely followed a hunch. He remembered an unmarked fire road, known only to locals, and barely used since the timber contracts ended in the 90s. There in the dirt, he discovered faint but fresh tire impressions. Deep grooves from a pickup, veering slightly as if uncertain. A short walk into the brush revealed nothing. Cadaver dogs sniffed the area for hours but detected no human remains. It was a dead end. Weeks passed. October rolled into November. Deer. Season came and went. The leaves fell, and with them, public interest in the story. The community grew quiet again, whispering theories behind closed doors. Clarence had simply vanished. Then, on a cold Monday morning, an envelope postmarked from Buffalo arrived at the sheriff's office. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper. I needed to leave. I'm sorry. Don't look for me. Clarence. The note was handwritten, the tone flat and impersonal. It lacked the meticulous script Clarence was known for. Something was wrong. Handwriting analyst Dr. Ellen Prager examined the note under forensic magnification. Her verdict was chilling. Telltale hesitations, unnatural pen pressure. The author paused frequently, likely copying rather than composing. Clarence, an electrician known for his smooth hand and steady lines, wouldn't have written this, she testified years later. Even more damning was what remained invisible to the naked eye. A forensic lab discovered traces of DNA on the envelopes, adhesive, specifically female saliva. The results wouldn't be made public until 2020, but the match was definitive. Reba Biddle. At the time, no charges were filed. But the case quietly shifted. Clarence was no longer just a missing person. Something far darker was unfolding beneath the surface, an illusion of a man lost in the woods when the truth may have never left the county at all. As investigators retraced Clarence's last known steps, another team quietly began following the money. The results would crack the calm facade Reba had presented from the start. Just 3 days after Clarence's disappearance, on October 15th, Reba visited Montrose Savings Bank and accessed their safe deposit box. Surveillance footage showed her alone, wearing dark sunglasses and a scarf despite the mild weather. When asked by the bank manager, Ronald Tipton, if Clarence would be joining her, Reba simply said, "He's away." Tipton would later recall that something about her tone raised alarms. Not worried, just businesslike, he testified, like she was checking off a list. 1 week later, on October 22nd, Reba cancelled Clarence's health insurance. The policy had been in place for years, paid monthly without fail. No explanation was given. She also made inquiries into the terms of their joint life insurance policy. Tipton would later testify that Reba asked about something unusual. Disappearance. Clauses. Can you cash in a policy if someone's missing but not declared dead? She asked. Then on November 3rd, a transaction triggered a bank alert. A $28,000 transfer from the couple's joint savings account to a private account solely under Reba's name. Clarence had never once used that account, nor was he listed on its terms. That money had been part of a larger inheritance from Clarence's parents, meant for a cabin he had always dreamed of building. Meanwhile, Clarence's employer, through IBW Local 1249, reported something odd. His prized set of Klein electrician's tools, worth over $3,000, were still locked in his workplace locker. Clarence never left them behind, not even for vacation. His co-workers remembered him calling them his lifeline. Reba never mentioned the tools. It was now clear. Whatever Clarence had planned, it didn't include leaving behind his money, his gear, or the tools he loved. Something had happened between his driveway and that phantom fire road. And it wasn't a man walking away from his life. It was a disappearance masked in routine and orchestrated with care. By the spring of 2013, subtle changes in Reba Biddle's life had become unmistakable. The woman once known for her quiet demeanor and modest living was now rebuilding her world piece by piece, but not with Clarence in it. First came the sale of their home. In March, Reba listed their 2-bedroom farmhouse at a price nearly 15% below market value. Local realtor Susan Kingsley found it odd. The house was in good condition, well kept. She could have gotten a lot more, Kingsley told investigators. When asked why she was selling, Reba replied, "Too many memories. I want to start over." The sale was swift. The buyer paid in cash, and within weeks Reba had moved into a rental cottage 40 miles south, closer to the town of Tunkhannock. There she began using her maiden name, Holtz, when introducing herself at the diner where she took a new waitress job. It was around that time that Reba was first spotted with Randall Farrow. At the Pines restaurant on Route 29, a waitress remembered them sitting together at a corner booth, laughing, talking, leaning in close. Farrow paid in cash, and Reba wore her hair pulled back differently, as if she were trying to look younger. The waitress didn't know his name then, but she remembered the way Reba had looked at him. "It wasn't a first date," she said. "It looked like a reunion." Meanwhile, back in Susquehanna County, Reba's former neighbor, Martha Hewitt, noticed something else. In mid-March, Reba spent an entire afternoon burning documents in the backyard fire pit. "She was dragging armloads of paper and folders out of the shed," Martha said. "Didn't say what it was, just smiled and said, 'Spring cleaning.' Some of those papers would have likely been helpful later. Investigators believe they may have included old letters, financial statements, and possibly early drafts of what would later be referred to as the Buffalo Letter." Farrow, on the surface, had no direct connection to Clarence, but Lisa Biddle, Clarence's younger sister, wasn't satisfied with surfaces. By early April, she had begun asking questions of her own, pushing past Reba's half-hearted explanations and into the history of a man she didn't trust. The man who'd suddenly entered her brother's widow's life without warning or context. What Lisa found next would change everything, and turn Clarence's disappearance from a cold case into a quiet storm of suspicion, betrayal, and ultimately, justice. But in the spring of 2013, no one could say that yet. To the outside world, Reba Holtz was just a woman starting over, a grieving wife learning to let go. No one saw the undercurrent of calculation that had been flowing quietly beneath the surface. No one but Lisa. Lisa Biddle had always been the quiet one in the family, the observer. But when her brother vanished without a trace, something inside her shifted. She didn't believe Clarence had run off. She didn't believe in vague letters or unexplained bank withdrawals. Most of all, she didn't believe Reba. So she began her own investigation. Lisa started with Randall Farrow. Public records revealed that he had once worked as a contract electrician at the Montour Power Plant in 2011, about an hour's drive from Clarence's home. It was the same year Clarence had done some subcontracting work in the same region. The overlap was brief, but it was enough to raise an eyebrow. Had Clarence and Farrow crossed paths? Had Farrow been watching from a distance all along? Digging deeper, Lisa requested a copy of Reba's life insurance paperwork. It had taken months, but when she finally received the documents, she found something chilling. One of the signature lines on the claim form had been forged, not just sloppily, signed but copied, traced from an earlier document, Clarence's handwriting, mimicked by someone with a shaky hand. It got worse. With the help of a private investigator, Lisa traced the origin of the so-called Buffalo Letter. Postal records revealed that it had never been mailed from Buffalo at all. It had been dropped into a mailbox in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, nearly 100 miles away. Surveillance footage from the area, while too grainy to confirm identity, showed a woman of Reba's build approaching the mailbox on a date that matched the letter's postmark. But the final piece came from a storage unit Reba had rented after selling the house. Lisa visited it under the guise of helping Reba clean up. What she found left her breathless. In the back corner of the unit, under a crate of household items, was Clarence's favorite hunting knife, an item he never left behind. It had been with him on every hunt since his 20s. Its leather sheath was worn but intact. Forensic testing later revealed dried traces of deer blood from 2011, his last confirmed hunting trip. But why would Reba hide it? Why not simply discard it or leave it in the house? To Lisa, the answer was simple: guilt. The knife was too personal, too intimate. It was a memory, and perhaps a trophy. Lisa took photos. She documented everything. She sent anonymous tips to law enforcement and waited. She wasn't ready to confront Reba yet, but she would be, and soon so would the law. For years, Clarence Biddle's silver 1999 Ford F-150 was considered as missing as the man himself. But in the summer of 2020, a routine traffic stop changed everything. On a quiet county road near Bradford, Pennsylvania, state troopers pulled over an older model truck with expired plates. The driver, none other than Randall Farrow, claimed it was his, purchased in cash years ago from an out-of-state seller. But the VIN told a different story. It was Clarence's truck. The vehicle was impounded, and a forensic team was called. In what they found was a time capsule preserved in deceit. The odometer showed only 217 miles had been added since October 2012. The seat adjustment still fit Clarence's 6'1" frame. Underneath the passenger seat, investigators found an old folded-up hunting permit dated 10/12/12, the day Clarence disappeared, but the most incriminating evidence was discovered in the truck bed. Forensic mechanic Javier Munez testified that the bed liner had been replaced but poorly. The bolts didn't match and the liner was misaligned. When investigators peeled it back, they uncovered a patch of dried blood embedded in the truck bed's original metal. It was faint, but still testable. DNA results confirmed it matched Clarence's blood type. Inside the glove box, detectives found his hunting license, never used. On the floorboard lay a pair of black mechanic's gloves. Swabs from inside revealed DNA under the fingernails. Clarence's skin cells, mixed with traces of oil and copper wire, were preserved, likely from the last time he wore them. When confronted with the findings, Farrow stuck to his story. He insisted he bought the truck from a private seller in Ohio, but couldn't provide a bill of sale or a name. He said the gloves were his, the blood must have belonged to an animal, and the hunting permit must have come with the glove box. He shrugged. The lies didn't hold. Troopers secured a search warrant for Farrow's residence, where more damning clues were uncovered. An old toolbox with initials CB, faintly scratched on its underside, and a torn piece of seat fabric that matched the truck's original interior. It became increasingly clear the truck hadn't gone missing. It had been hidden. Farrow had either stored it somewhere remote or barely used it, hoping it would remain forgotten. He failed to consider that vehicles, like guilt, don't vanish without leaving a trail. Lisa Biddle, who had spent 8 years begging for new leads, finally had what she needed. Her brother's truck had come home. Back in Susquehanna County, the one place investigators hadn't fully explored was hiding in plain sight, the backyard shed. It had stood there for years, a dull gray structure with a padlocked door and a slanted roof, always meticulously maintained by Clarence. Reba had insisted it held nothing but old tools and paint cans. Deputies had glanced through it early in the investigation, but nothing seemed out of place. That changed in late 2020. Armed with a new search warrant and a hunch, investigators returned to the shed, this time with luminol and ground-penetrating radar. The first breakthrough came when the luminol lit up the floorboards. Faint blue glows traced out what appeared to be drag marks and several large pooled areas, classic signs of blood cleanup. The boards themselves had been scrubbed and bleached. Beneath them, stains had soaked into the joists, but there was more. Behind a pegboard wall used to hang tools, detectives found a hidden compartment. Inside was a small metal lockbox containing Clarence's missing key ring, a spare checkbook, and his favorite Zippo lighter, engraved with the initials CB. The items were clean, but their location spoke volumes. Whoever had stashed them there didn't want them found. The real shock came when investigators examined the shed's foundation. Soil tests revealed it had been disturbed relatively recently, despite Reba claiming no modifications had been made since 2008. The radar detected a void beneath a corner of the poured concrete slab. Digging carefully, forensic specialists uncovered a single size 11 boot print in drying cement. Clarence's size. No other prints surrounded it, just the single step, as if it had been made while the concrete was still setting and then covered quickly. Investigators concluded that the shed's base had been altered after Clarence's disappearance, possibly to conceal evidence or create a burial chamber that was later abandoned. The backyard, once a mundane patch of grass and tools, had become a crime scene. Reba's world was unraveling, and Lisa was finally starting to see the full picture of how far someone would go to erase a life. As investigators expanded their search beyond the physical evidence, the final nails in Reba's defense came not from blood or boots, but from paper, ink, and data. The first breakthrough came from a forensic analysis of the so-called Buffalo letter, the cryptic note that had mysteriously surfaced months after Clarence's disappearance. While the content vaguely suggested Clarence had left voluntarily, handwriting expert Dr. Yuan noted peculiar consistencies. He compared the note to Reba's old grocery lists and birthday cards. Her pen pressure was uniquely heavy, especially on the downstrokes, and her habit of misspelling separate as separate appeared in both the letter and a shopping list found in her purse. The overlap was too precise to ignore. More telling was the glue used to seal the envelope. Investigators tested it and found traces of saliva. DNA analysis confirmed it matched Reba's genetic profile. There was no reasonable explanation for how Clarence's supposed farewell note had been sealed by his wife's mouth. Then came the financial inconsistencies. Prosecutors discovered a draft of a suicide note on Reba's laptop, dated weeks before the Buffalo letter had been mailed. The file had been partially deleted, but forensic recovery tools pulled up phrases nearly identical to the final version. That alone painted a damning picture. Premeditation. Pharaoh wasn't innocent either. His name surfaced in a 2013 pawnshop receipt. The item he sold? A full Klein Tools electrician's kit, serial matched to Clarence's union-issued set. He'd been careful, but not enough. Surveillance footage showed him arriving at the shop with the same gloves later found in Clarence's truck. Perhaps the most chilling discovery came from GPS metadata. Cell tower triangulation placed Reba's phone near the Wilkes Barre mailbox, the day the Buffalo letter was mailed. She had told investigators she'd been home all day. That lie unraveled any remaining doubt. Bit by bit, the paper trail revealed the truth. A suicide note that wasn't written by the victim. Tools sold by a man who shouldn't have had them. A digital footprint leading to deception. Reba had tried to write Clarence out of existence. Now the evidence was writing her fate. The courthouse was packed on the first day of the Commonwealth versus Reba Holtz and Randall Pharaoh. Locals, journalists, and retired electricians sat shoulder to shoulder, some remembering Clarence from his union days. Others came because, after nearly a decade, justice had finally stepped into the light. The prosecution's case was built meticulously. First on the stand was Denise Halpin, Reba's former co-worker. She told me back in September, Denise said, that she'd be free by deer season. I thought she meant a vacation. I didn't realize she meant free of Clarence. Then came Carlos Mendez, a prison informant who'd served time with Pharaoh. He bragged about burying a Sparky, Mendez testified, using slang for an electrician. Said they wouldn't find him as long as the shed stayed put. Forensic accountant Lila Greer presented the money trail. 3 months before Clarence vanished, Reba had increased his life insurance policy. 2 weeks after he disappeared, she accessed their safe deposit box and cancelled his health insurance. These weren't the actions of a grieving wife, Greer stated, but of someone staging an exit strategy. Defense attorneys scrambled. They claimed Clarence had run away to Canada, citing stress, marital issues, and depression. But border authorities produced comprehensive logs. No Clarence Biddle had crossed. No man matching his description had even tried. The final blow came when Lisa Biddle took the stand. She recounted every day she had spent searching, every call ignored, every lead pursued. Then she held up Clarence's favorite hunting knife, found in Reba's storage unit. He never went anywhere without this, she said. You don't leave behind the thing that makes you feel safest. After 3 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. Verdict: guilty. Both Reba Holtz and Randall Pharaoh were convicted of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and fraud. But even in victory, one question still haunted the courtroom. Where was Clarence? With the gavel's final strike, the courtroom exhaled. Justice, long delayed, had finally spoken. But as reporters filed stories and the public celebrated closure, the people who truly knew Clarence Biddle understood one grim fact. The man himself was still missing. His body had never been found. Why had Pharaoh kept the truck for so long? A trophy? A slip? Or a lingering attachment to what they had done? Even under threat of life imprisonment, he never said. And Reba, stoic as ever, gave no confession, no location, no remorse. Investigators re-examined everything: satellite images, land sales, construction records. They even drained a nearby pond once used by Pharaoh's former employer. Nothing. The shed, once believed to hold answers, had been a decoy, a breadcrumb. If Clarence had been buried, it wasn't there. Still, hope lived on in one person, Lisa. Every October 12th, she drove to the state evidence facility where Clarence's truck now sat, weathered and silent. She'd step up to the fence, wearing his old flannel, and place a single white carnation near the gate. It had been his favorite flower, the kind that grew near their childhood home, next to the rusted garden hose he used to tangle for fun. She had started a Facebook group, Justice for Clarence Biddle, which had grown to nearly 5,000 members. Armchair sleuths, retired detectives, and former co-workers posted theories, maps, and memories. Some even volunteered to search old mining lands. As of 2024, Clarence's remains still haven't been found, but his story continues to echo. In the Chunsi, shared determination of a sister who never gave up, in a community that watched a disappearance become a conspiracy, and in a truck that, though silent, still holds the whispers of a man taken too soon. Clarence Biddle vanished into the stillness of a Pennsylvania morning, leaving behind a wife with secrets, a truck full of questions, and a sister who refused to forget. For years, silence shrouded his fate, until paper trails, DNA evidence, and one woman's relentless search tore through the lies. Justice came, but closure did not, because somewhere Clarence still waits, beneath soil, behind silence, beyond the reach of the living. And maybe, just maybe, someone watching right now holds the missing piece. Justice was served, but the truth, it's still out there. If you were captivated by this true crime mystery, don't forget to like this video, comment with your theories. Where do you think Clarence is? Subscribe to our channel for more gripping investigations, unsolved cases, and deep dives into the darkest corners of real-life crime. And tap the bell so you never miss a twist. We tell the stories others forget. You help us keep them alive.